Fable is freakishly good at systems integration. It's not the best on every benchmark, but if you ask it to string together a whole series of systems, it will go out, find the systems, understand the APIs, and string them together. This is producing a very weird change in software business models. I noticed that over the weekend when I used it to update my app. Normally, I just build a web app and I put some APIs on it, and then I integrate that with other systems. But what I did over the weekend was create a complete vertically integrated system where I not only had the web app, but I built bot hosting so I could spawn Hermes bots. I put that on a private network, and I built mobile and desktop apps that would connect to the bots through the private network. That's a lot of stuff strung together, and normally it would take months to do and even longer to test. I did it over the weekend. I don't think that the code that came out is good code from a human point of view, but it's good code from the point of view of a coder that can string together a long series of changes and run end-to-end tests on the whole system, which is something that humans don't normally do. And what we're going to see now is a lot more software companies that vertically integrate, that include all of the components of their system rather than building just modular pieces. The advantage of this is that you can innovate faster. You don't have to wait for updates from your suppliers. And it's cheaper. You're not paying as many people. And you have more ways to build a unique product. So we've arrived with that at sort of an era of post-human code in the sense that we're building systems that humans wouldn't normally build. And I feel like we're close to the system of post-human code where the AI is writing code that humans would not normally write. Currently, AI writes code that's human readable because that's what it's trained on. But what if we remove the human from the loop somewhere? What if we run self-improvement loops, these auto research loops, where the computer generates code and tests it and generates variations until the performance improves? In this situation, you often have to have humans writing the tests and the evals, but there's no requirement that the human read the code. In fact, a self-improvement loop works much better if you take humans out of it. It runs faster and more efficiently, and it gives you a better result. This type of coding will produce code that feeds AI learning. So the AI will eventually be learning from code that works well, that's been tagged as successful, that has never been written or even looked at by a human. In theory, it will then end up learning to write code that's not human readable. It might be dense blocks of spaghetti code that are not modular and have jumps that look random. That's the way DNA works. So when we run evolution, that's the kind of thing that we get. Elon thinks that we'll be generating machine code directly, that the AI will learn to generate machine code, and that type of code will be smaller and faster than the compiled code that we have now. You can already see the beginning of this type of post-human code in the way that Fable writes plans. So a lot of people complain that Fable uses a language that's not completely English. And in fact, that's true. If you ask it to write plans, it will write quite dense and very difficult to read plans. This takes us to the edge of post-human code. You can no longer read all the code that it produces, and you can even now no longer, in some cases, read all the plans that it produces. So we talked about vertically integrated software earlier. And what I wonder is, what if there's a whole vertically integrated stack that's designed just for a single human? So if a human shows up at your company and runs some diagnostics and does some stuff, you might say, gee, I could hire a different human that runs the same diagnostics and get a similar result. And that drives down pricing on human skills and human labor. But what if I came to your company and I ran diagnostics and other types of software that nobody else had because it's part of my personal software stack? And what if I was building that software stack by stealing, essentially, by looking at other tools that people like that are useful and saying, okay, clone that tool, put it in my personal software stack. I'm going to put my own mark on it. It's going to be part of the Andy toolkit and skill base. That's one way of fighting back against the effect of AI that drives down compensation to the price of a few dollars worth of tokens. And it's definitely something that I'm going to try. Or we might go in a more collaborative direction. Model vendors are giving us a new stack that begins with tools. Those are the things that connect to your data and actions. They're often called connectors. This is the stuff that Fable builds easily. Then we add skills. These are instructions for the AI that tell it to fit our personal workflow and preferences. And on top of that, the AI adds generative user interfaces. It generates text or HTML or voice under the influence of these skills to interact with us, but it never actually uses the fixed templated type of HTML that we have in an app. In this kind of workflow, the skills are produced by the users. They aren't produced by programmers. They aren't tested by programmers. They're produced and tested by power users. And I think that this is going to give us a new kind of open source that I call role sourcing. So there are a lot of people that work in horizontal roles. They're accountants, marketers, salespeople, programmers, and they work in lots of different companies. That's why it's called horizontal across these vertical companies. They don't compete, and they actually have a fairly strong incentive to share their skills. We see that happening right now. And I think the next wave of apps, specialized apps might actually come out of these sharing of skills between people who are in the same role. And skills are actually a very flexible format because you can ask the AI to essentially compile them down to scripts that are much more efficient and then include those scripts in the skill package. You can also embed content and knowledge. There's a references folder. So it's a very flexible format and very amenable to modification and sharing and by power users. So I see this kind of role source software as being important, and I'm actually starting a company, AI Power Guilds, that will set up power guilds for this type of sharing, and I hope we see complete app stacks emerging out of it.